Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here this morning for the second Live from the KBK, which is a program series we're doing this year as a part of Leadership Week 2020. Leadership Week is a university-wide collaborative to strengthen the culture of student leadership at Ohio State. So we have all sorts of great programs happening throughout the week, whether you have lots of leadership experience or you are sort of new to the concept. We hope that you attend another event even after this one, but we're glad that you are here this morning, and you can find out more at the Leadership Week website at go.osu.edu/leadershipweek. But today's session, we're coming to you live from the Keith B. Key Center for Student Leadership and Service Lounge on the second floor of the Union to chat with some awesome campus experts about one of our themes of Leadership Week, community engagement. So we believe that leadership is a process that can be learned with the ultimate goal of bettering our communities. Programs focused on community engagement in Leadership Week explore the various ways in which students can be engaged in their communities in a positive and meaningful way. So that being said, I'm going to ask our four panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves, starting with AJ.
Anna. Hi, my name's AJ. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently the coordinator of service and outreach with Student Activities, Office of Student Life. So one of my main roles is helping facilitate local service volunteer opportunities for students in addition to working with our OSU Votes cohort.
Thanks, AJ. Connor, I'm coming to you next.
Hi everyone, my name is Connor Jones. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the coordinator for the Buck-I-SERV Alternative Breaks program here at Ohio State. Typically we send out about 1,000 participants across the country and the world to do service in local communities. However, we are not able to do that right now, so we've shifted more of our programming to a virtual space. So I'm happy to chat a little bit more with some great colleagues today.
Awesome, and then Michelle.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Miranda. I am the program manager of the Department of Social Change. I am she, her, hers. Just to give a little overview, I oversee the majority of our programs within the community of Columbus from our department, as well as the day-to-day tasks of our office. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And I am Anna Wagner, I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I serve as the senior coordinator for student leadership development in student activities. I'm really excited to chat with you all this morning about community engagement and the way that community engagement and leadership interact. And I think that's maybe where I was hoping to start. As you all reflect on leadership development opportunities for students and opportunities for students to engage in their community, what comes to mind to you in terms of how those two concepts are connected? And feel free to just jump in when you have something to share.
I'm unmuted, right? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So community engagement and leadership. So I think that through working with community engagement, a lot of the times you have the opportunity to interact with communities, with other people who are different from you. And it really allows students and really anybody engaging with the community to reflect on their own value set, their own beliefs, and how they want those to show up in their everyday life. So I think that through reflection that we do with community engagement, you really can learn a lot about your own personal style. When we think about how, sorry, my dog is going to make a guest appearance, thinking about how, you know, community engagement and leadership connect with one another. Sorry, just got really distracted by my dog.
All good. Connor, I saw you unmute too.
Yeah, so I think AJ has a good point, and I think that's a key component of all community engagement is finding that kind of connection across difference, because I think that makes you just a more well-rounded leader. And I think it's useful to find that connection outside of kind of your insular communities as well. So expanding your the work that you do to the larger Columbus community or wherever you're from, or, you know, anywhere in the country or the world, making those connections elsewhere really helps you get out of kind of that comfort zone, that bubble that you can find yourself so easily keeping yourself in, because it's just so much easier, it's so much safer. But by taking the less safe, the more, you know, more, I don't want to say adventurous, but more like forward thinking route, and going out and working in the community, you can find that level of connection there that helps you better understand the world around you, which I think makes anyone a better leader.
Awesome. So sort of to build off of that, as you're thinking about going into communities, whether Michelle and AJ, you're focused a little bit more on our local Columbus community, and Connor, you're focused a little bit more nationally and internationally, how would you encourage students to practice responsible leadership while serving and interacting in those communities? And what sort of things come to mind when you're being a responsible, engaged community member? Michelle.
Off. One of the things that is really important as far as like, especially over here at Social Change, is making sure that part of being a responsible and active citizen is knowing the community that you serve and understanding the organization that, that you're working with. And I think, encouraging our students to be independent and really reach out to our community partners and stuff really encourages them to become leaders. They're developing their own sense of responsibility and accountability with reaching out to those in our community and working with different people. So I think that really helps in developing, those leadership skills. Let's see. Yeah.
Awesome.
Add on that too, Michelle, I think that when thinking about being a responsible leader or a responsible volunteer going into the community, it's really based in what our community needs as well. So you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible if you want to do community work. Because you might go in with an idea of, oh, well, if this is an after-school program, then I'm going to be working directly with the kids every single day of the week. Whereas they might need you to do more admin tasks because collectively, when everybody pitches in, it makes the process smoother for everybody. So being flexible, being adaptable, and being able to shift your, expectations that you might have when going into volunteer, because it's really about serving the needs of the community, addressing those needs, and figuring out what role you can play, because everybody's role makes a difference at the end of the day.
No, that's definitely true. And just to attest to that, like, a lot of our ambassadors, although we have the same program, we go in different schools, well, their programs are very different. The kids at KIP may have different needs than those at Trevitt. And so you're definitely right. And I think that is a part of understanding the community and the kids that you serve, because they can be very different, just from near east side to far east side, north side to the short north. So it can be very different. That's very true.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain level of humility that you need to take into doing service as well, recognizing that you don't have a place above the community members that you are serving with, and making sure that you check that privilege before you get there. So thinking about that and making sure that you're serving side by side, not serving someone because you're doing such a great deed for them. That's not really what community engagement is about. And that's not how you build, I think at the end of the day, to do community engagement effectively and to actually make it happen, is you have to have a level of trust between yourself and the community members, and that trust has to be earned. It is not initially given. So you need to be the one who, like AJ said, being willing to do the other tasks, being willing to learn, being willing to, when you make mistakes, own up to them. Those are the things that allow you to do good community engagement work, because the people around you and the people you're serving with feel that you're there for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trust and mutuality is important. And I notice all of you use this language of serving with, not just serving the community, but serving alongside. And that partnership is really key to actually sustainable, responsible relationships with the community. So y'all are starting to talk about this a little bit, but I'm curious, what sort of tangible leadership development skills do you think students develop as they're doing community engagement efforts? What are they able to take away, talk about, hone throughout community engagement work?
I feel like Michelle touched on this a little bit in her previous answer, just about the fact that, like, you're accountable to yourself and this community partner. You're taking the initiative to reach out and set something up. That includes, following up if you don't hear back. If you really want to work with a community partner, if you really want to be engaged, then it also takes legwork for you to find yourself or put yourself in those positions as well. Our community partners and nonprofits are really busy. They're often understaffed. So you also have to have a little bit of grace when working with these community partners to be patient and send a follow-up message. And if you don't hear something back, because you send an email to a general volunteer email, figure out who else you can talk to get involved with them. So just that initiative and that accountability and really that independence of going after an experience or a volunteer opportunity that you really want is a really good tangible skill to talk about. If somebody were to ask you, explain a time when you had to overcome something, or when you had to work in a gray area, thinking about like interview questions, there's a lot of experiences that you can draw from volunteering, about being patient, being flexible, working across difference. All of these things are really great tangible leadership skills as well that are learned through engaging with the community.
Awesome. Thanks, AJ.
I think I would like to add resourceful to that. Like a lot of the things, they're busy. Sometimes we're getting their volunteer emails. Sometimes we're not getting the right contact. And one of the things, I try to encourage the students, just because they don't email you back, that doesn't mean you can't, reach back out to them. Sometimes it's necessary to continue that conversation and just give a little push. And even just coming from a charitable nonprofit background, you have to be resourceful in the things you have. So even we have a very nice resource room for our students to use for activities for their programs. And even then it's like, what can you use that is already here? What is out in the community that's already here that you can use? It's the same concept that we use in the office that we want to try to have our students use in the community. There's so many resources and tools that are out here in Columbus that I feel like sometimes we just don't know are there or don't utilize. And so one of the things I really encourage our students, see what's out in Columbus. You may be from here or you may not. You may be a student from out of town, but see what's here. There's so many things that are here that can be useful for us. And so I just say resourcefulness. I think that's something that, is very key when becoming a leader. You have to understand where you can be, the most resourceful person you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's so much particularly that our Columbus community has to offer that students may or may not have an advantage or the ability to take advantage of, but even just like hopping on CODA and exploring and seeing other neighborhoods and seeing what's available in terms of service organizations or like arts resources, whatever that looks like. I think there's a lot here that you may miss out on if you don't leave the campus area. And Michelle, I might start with you on this particular question, and you'll understand why in just a second. But in student life, we do utilize the social change model of leadership as one of our guiding models, which says, among many other things, that the ultimate goal of leadership is positive social change. So how would you encourage students to strive towards social change in any of their leadership roles, whether it's explicitly a community engagement effort or one of the other ways that we know students can develop leadership skills across campus and in the community?
Oh, that was a loaded question. I feel like there was part one and a part two.
You're welcome.
I guess, what I would say, actually, can you read that question back again?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we know from the social change model that the ultimate goal of leadership is positive social change, how would you encourage students to work towards positive social change in any of their leadership roles?
Yeah, first thing is, making sure that you become an active citizen. What are you doing just in your everyday life that you can affect social change? Because it doesn't have to just be do your leadership role. It can be through your everyday life. What are you doing today or tomorrow that could affect something like this? Just even by posting things on social media about voting is social change. It is this influencing those around you, influencing your community. So I guess I still think that was such a loaded question. I'm still trying to gather everything. Okay.
It's all good. You can also tap in a friend while you brainstorm.
Yeah, second part. Anybody want to tap in? I think I got the first part.
Yeah,
well,
I mean.
I was going to say, I feel like you really like the social change model of leadership, so I was going to.
Yes, I was going to talk about that. Also, another one of my favorite models, which this is, if you know me at all, this is something I talk about almost every day probably, but the social change wheel is a tool used as well that emphasizes a lot of different social change strategies. I think sometimes it can be so easy to get caught up in hey, direct service is the only kind of social change strategy that we can use, or hey, if I donate, that's the only thing we can do. But there's so many different strategies. You can think about research and community-based participatory research and utilizing that as a social change strategy. Or, Michelle talked a little bit about advocacy through social media, or actively participating in conversation and facilitating dialogue across difference. All of those are different ways of creating social change, and all of those are necessary to eventually achieve social change. You're not going to get it just by doing direct service. That's an important component, but that's not the only component. And so not just getting stuck on this is the thing that we have to do. And I think nowadays, even more so than ever, like people need to find ways that are maybe less direct and are more kind of focused on either using digital platforms or connecting with others in a different sort of way than we've had before. And so finding the ways to be able to do that and be able to recognize the different spaces that you can fill to create social change is, I think, a really important way to grow as a leader.
I think there is a common misconception that Connor mentioned, is that I think a lot of people interpret direct services as the way that you perform social change. And as he mentioned, it's not. There's many ways, just like through social media and as he said, advocacy, virtual tutoring services, because even though those are still direct, they're now, virtual. But he's correct. There's so much you can do, just writing letters to your local government, understanding the policies that are occurring in our local communities, and attending meetings or virtual meetings and Zooms to really become part of the community, understand it. And I do agree, like there's so many more ways. I do think that despite COVID, blessing in disguise, I think it has opened the door to more opportunities to be able to do the work of social change without just being in person, and really showing the different avenues that we can approach and how we can approach them.
Yeah. Well, and y'all have opened the door to a road I wanted to walk down around how students can practice community engagement in 2020 in the midst of these dual pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice. What advice or resources would you direct students to practice being an engaged citizen or active citizen right now in this particular moment in time?
I think one of the things that I talk a lot about with students who are looking for volunteer opportunities, if they're looking for that direct service route, I think that the most important thing is to do that outreach to even see if the organization that you want to work with is accepting in-person volunteers. Because we know that from our community partners that a lot of their needs and a lot of their protocols have shifted. And so also their website information might not be up to date. So it's not like you can just show up to a place on a Saturday and be able to do stuff hands-on. So it takes a little bit more initiative to look into these resources. There are a ton of different ways that you can engage with community partners online. Pay It Forward has built a socially distant service PDF form essentially from our community partners that's like, hey, as of right now, what can students help out with? And so a lot of it that we've seen is social media awareness, helping to boost their platforms for fundraising, doing donation drives. A handful of our food pantry partners recently have shifted to a delivery model of their food. So if clients, participants, neighbors can't show up, you can submit your family size and then the food gets delivered to you. So if you have access to a vehicle or if you have a friend with a vehicle, you could always utilize that to help connect people to the resources that they need. So there is still a handful of opportunities going on. I also really enjoy the Point app, which is a locally Columbus-based app that has a bunch of volunteer opportunities for people in the city of Columbus. So that's really great because all the information is there. If it's digital, if it's in person, if it's ongoing, if it's one time. In addition, any of the people in this virtual room can also connect you to many resources. So if you are looking for like a specific, I want to work with a foundation that addresses this community need. talk to one of us so we can help you navigate all of these things. If you are looking for a very general, broad overview, I would say check out our website. All of our emails are on our respective pages, but there are still a lot of ways to engage with community right now. It's just a matter of figuring out what fits with your schedule. What are you comfortable with? Because ultimately your health and safety is key. And so if you are not comfy doing in-person things, there's still a role for you to play to contribute to positive social change. I don't know if Michelle and Connor have other ways as well.
Yeah, so I think those are all great. I also think, a lot of organizations on campus, like shameless plug, all of the organizations that are here are doing some programming that is more virtual as well. So finding that on campus, if you want to kind of find it in a more centralized location, we have all of that available here. But I think one of the biggest things I've seen is, AJ mentioned a lot of the stuff that was kind of beginning of COVID that we had to adjust for. And I don't think a lot of organizations were prepared to offer virtual opportunities besides just like, hey, donate online or follow us on social media. But I think over the last few months, we've seen significant progression from a number of organizations. So on Volunteer Match, or I'm spacing, there's another website that you can use that's more specific to Columbus, but they list everything out as like, hey, here's a virtual opportunity, or hey, here's an in-person socially distanced opportunity. So I've seen a lot more things of like reading a book to kids at an early childhood education center, or baking cookies for women in a shelter. Like those kind of things are popping up now that are often led by members of those organizations. And so like getting to still participate in those virtual opportunities, they're still valuable and still likely require some sort of in-person component. You got to drop off the cookies, or you got to send something. But I've found that organizations are getting more and more creative and flexible and finding opportunities that they're recognizing, hey, we still want our volunteers engaged with us. How do we do that and make them feel safe? And so I think there's a lot more stuff now than there was a few months ago. So I definitely encourage you to check out individual organizations for what they offer, as well as those kind of hub sites for some stuff as well.
Yeah, I think it was the Point app that AJ was mentioning earlier is the one that's more Columbus local as well. Michelle.
Hey, AJ, are you guys working with the Gladden food pantry? Just curious.
So we have in the past, but Pay It Forward doesn't have any regular connections with Gladden.
Okay, we're coordinating through them for volunteers. So I was just curious. And they're doing the same thing where they're doing delivery services to families also.
Cool. Yeah, the NEMAP Food Pantry, which is located off of 11th and 71 South, is they just launched a new delivery service for their clients. So it's cool that also a lot of the organizations, to Connor's point too, are getting more flexible and more creative with what they're able to do, because I think that communities are resilient. We can shift and we can adapt in the face of crisis. And so it's a really cool thing to be in this work, to see these shifts happen as well.
Agreed. I don't think I had too much really to add on top of Connor and AJ's what they said, because they said pretty much everything I'd probably say. We too had to become extremely creative with how we did things, especially because we did a lot of direct services in the schools in Columbus City. And so it's hard now that they're not in school anymore. How can we still work with them, and being socially distanced? Part of that was we have a program in Trevitt. And although the kids aren't there, what we decided to do was do grow bags. And it's one of our programs is called Cultivating Social Change, in which we purchase grow bags, soil, gardening kits, and seeds, along with literacy items and their books that are representations of the community that we are serving. And it's really good. We're going to kick it off soon. And, it's meant to teach kids about entrepreneurship and understanding how things grow in life, being able to be patient and watching the process of plants grow in their houses and knowing that they did it. So like that's one of the things we were trying to figure out. How can we still engage with kids and their families without being with the kids and their families? And so this was one of the ways. And, what the biggest question was, what does direct services look like virtually? Like, how can we really do this? And we're looking into podcasts. We're also partnering with Columbus City Schools. They have learning extension centers where they partnered with faith-based organizations around Columbus. And so we are also filtering volunteers and some of our ambassadors as leads to those LECs on the Near East Side. So, those are some of the ways, and those who feel safe enough to go, those are some of the ways that, we're trying to still be engaged in the community while still being safe, amongst the other things that were already mentioned, though.
Yeah. And I think just to throw one more thing in the mix there that Michelle, you talked about a little bit earlier whenever I threw you on the spot, but I think the other piece of this community engagement puzzle is civic engagement, and the role that that plays in terms of being actively engaged, whether that is making a plan to vote and practicing voting, whether that is reading the news, discussing public events with your friends and your family, reading news sources that aren't just Twitter or Instagram and like double checking them on other sites as well. I think like activism that we've talked about, right? Like that civic engagement piece of the puzzle is also critical in terms of, particularly as we're combating very real pandemics and the impacts that it has on our community. So throw that in the mix there too.
I mean, that's definitely, something we strive for. Even with our ambassadors, we try to have at least a monthly meeting with them just to talk about what they're doing in their community. Like how is it going? What are you engaging in? What are these roads you're taking? What are the roles you're taking on in these different parts? Because it's important to understand that. Are you attending any community events? Are you attending the community watch parties that they have? What are you watching as far as the news? Not only, it's important to engage within your community, but it's also important to talk about it amongst your peers and understand how other people and the opinions of others that you're surrounded by. We definitely encourage that. We try at any moments any emails that I get that involve anything that has to do with civic engagement, I'm shooting it out. I'm shooting it out to, just so they have the opportunity, they know about the opportunities. I think when it comes to civic engagement, that is the one thing that I know we kind of discussed this in a different meeting, but sometimes I'm not aware of all the opportunities that are there. And so just, what I try to tell students and just others is, if you have an opportunity, let me know so that I can let everybody else know. And I think that sometimes is the biggest struggle that I have is not being able to, not having the access to those resources that I'm not able to provide for others if I don't have access to them. So just trying to make sure I keep everybody engaged, just doing my best at least.
Yeah. So we are almost at the end of our time together this morning. So I wanted to just wrap us up. I know it goes very quickly. With what one piece of advice would y'all give to a student who is looking to develop their leadership skills, either in a community engagement arena or just sort of generally?
So something that I was thinking about, because Michelle said it earlier, that it kind of just light bulb that I wanted to mention is that there are a lot of things that already exist. And in order to be a leader, it doesn't mean that you have to start something from scratch or that you need to be the one person in charge, right? Like leadership is not positional. You can be a leader by joining something that's already happening in your community. So if you're really passionate about something, look and see if the community has it first and see for ways for you to get involved and bring your experience to that experience really. And then if, it's not there, then go ahead and create something, but double check with the community first and see how you can get engaged and how you can bring your skills and your strengths to those roles. Because a lot of things already do exist. So instead of recreating the wheel, bring your expertise to them and make it stronger. So that would be mine.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would say get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think a lot of times that people don't want to enter into these spaces because they're like, oh, I don't know anyone, or this population shows different identities than I do, fit in, or I don't know as much, so I don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's okay not to know as much. It's important to go in with an open mind, and might not be super comfortable right at first, but it's growing through that and learning through that. And when you learn new things, not letting that education belittle you, letting it help you grow as an individual. That's just how service is sometimes. And so, even if you're going out and doing it by yourself, or you're doing it with a group of hopefully 10 or less at this point, but eventually, whatever size group you may have, being willing to share those experiences with others, being willing to connect and honestly try and be there with community members and serve with them side by side, and learn from their lived experiences as well.
Ditto and ditto, everything before me. My advice would be to have an open mind going into any service that you give, and to really know and become familiar with the community that you're serving. It's important to, along with the open mind, to really have that somewhat of an understanding of where you are and who you're serving. And also network. You never know who you will meet in these opportunities or in the spaces that you're in, but take the time to get to know the people you are around and network, because you never know what opportunities can come from the networking and the relationships that you make with those people.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining this morning for an awesome conversation. Again, thanks to the Keith B. Key Center for Student Leadership and Service for hosting us for these conversations all week. For those who are listening in, again, the rest of the Leadership Week calendar, I just popped that link in the chat, but it's go.osu.edu/leadershipweek. All sorts of great other community engagement programs, including some hosted by the lovely people on this call. So we would love to see you all at those later this week. But thank you all so much and have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks, Anne.